Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 level podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 16th episode this week, where we'll be discussing news around the NFL, debating aspects of the Patriots season to date and the remainder of the season, and analyzing the matchup versus the Colts this upcoming Saturday night. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats 300 level pod for up to the minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So, Kevin, since there was the bye week this last week, there isn't really much to discuss about the Patriots last game since we already went into it in detail last week. What was your takeaway from news around the NFL? Some of the different games that we saw, just like off the top of the head, some that come to mind are the Bucs facing the Bills, Chiefs versus Raiders, and then the Ravens as well.
Yeah, I think the Bucs Bills game was probably one of the biggest ones this weekend, and was probably the most interesting ones to watch. I think really the 1 o'clock window was pretty terrible, actually. Kind of kicking myself that I don't have Red Zone except on my phone. But the Bucs, I'd say, after the first half looked like they were destroying the Bills, and the Bills looked like they were dead. It looked like that 1-2 punch of the Patriots and Brady had left them for dead for the rest of the year, and it was going to be a pretty not easy game, but it was a game I'd be looking forward to after this week against the Colts. That really all changed in the fourth quarter. The Bills made a game of it. They almost won that game, and I think Josh Allen had some good plays too. He ran really well, ended up hurting his toe, but doesn't seem like a big thing. But I think that's kind of the biggest storyline about the Bills kind of turning it around. And I think we don't really like moral victories around here, but that was maybe kind of a moral victory for them when they're down by 21 points. They come back against Tom Brady and almost beat him. So I think it makes me a little bit more worried just for that game coming up, where they might think that they know that they could go toe to toe with them and us and see how that goes. So I think that was my biggest thing from this weekend that we saw.
Yeah, I have to agree. First half, I believe the Bucs went into the half 24-3, and at that point, I was thinking, wow, the Bills are really just starting to give up. Which after they lost to the Patriots, I believe they lost 4 of their last 7 going into that game. I thought if the Bucs beat them and beat them big, then this could be their season where they don't even make the playoffs, and it looked like they were starting to give up. But with them coming back, it kind of makes me worried a little bit, where maybe they found something. Also, just mentioning the first half, where I know the Bucs have one of the best, if not the best, run defenses in the NFL. But to go the entire first half with a single handoff, it kind of seemed like Belichick was in McDermott's head, where Belichick only threw the ball 3 times, and McDermott seemed like he wanted to go into this game showing everyone, well, Belichick only threw it 3 times, I'm not even going to hand the ball off at all to show how smart I am. And then it just completely backfired. I think they did fight back. Some could argue that they should have won it, depending on the refs. There were also some missed calls against the Bills as well, but there were some questionable calls here and there. But they did fight back, and it does make it a little worrisome. Not worrisome, but it's probably going to be a big game, a close game in a couple of weeks when we face them. And just wanted to bring one thing up is Bills lost last week to Patriots quarterback Mac Jones. Bills lost 2 weeks ago. Last week they lost to former Patriot Tom Brady. This week they're facing former Patriot Cam Newton. Do they make it a 3-game losing streak to Patriot quarterbacks?
I don't think so. I think Newton's not that good. So I think he's going to. The only hope for Newton is that the Panthers defense is really good. So it's something that they can kind of slow down Josh Allen and kind of defend him. So that's his only saving grace. I don't think Newton's quarterbacking skills would be enough to take him to victory for here. But you also think he's 0-11 in his last 11 starts with the Panthers. Eventually he's got to break that, so could be this week. Next game really was the Chiefs Raiders. I kind of mentioned that the 1 o'clock window was pretty bad. There was them, and then the other game was a blow, and I can't remember which one it was, but that means it wasn't that good.
Was it the Ravens Browns?
No, that was in 1 o'clock, but it was the game they switched to because it was a blowout for the Chiefs game. But anyway, Chiefs looked really good against the Raiders. Makes me a little bit more worried too against the Chiefs. It seems like they're fully back. I don't believe fully in the Raiders, but I also think the Raiders usually give the Chiefs a little bit of a struggle. So the fact that they won that overwhelmingly just makes me kind of thinking the Chiefs are really the number one team probably in this conference that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
No, the only thing I have to add is I think maybe 5 weeks ago when you and me were, I don't know if we mentioned this on the podcast, but when you and me were texting, we were wondering who's the one team you don't want to face in the AFC in the playoffs. And both of us said the Chiefs, even though they weren't playing well at the time. It's just they have so much talent. I know they do have holes on their team, but it looks like maybe the last 5-6 weeks, their defense has actually turned it around. Their offense still doesn't look like it's full swing of Chiefs offense from 2018 to 2020, but they do have the talent there where they could score on you at any given time. So I know the Patriots match up well with them, but they do still scare me if you have to play them in the playoffs. And looks like last week after playing the Raiders very well, pretty much blowing them out, they might be hitting their stride at key moments.
Exactly. And the way that things are going right now, if things all hold true, if you're the number 1 or number 2 seed, it could be another AFC Championship game against the Chiefs, and it all depends on that bye. Who gets the bye? Who's number 1? Is it here? Is it Kansas? So Kansas City, not actually Kansas, it's Missouri. Where is it going to be? So that's a big thing. It all looks like everything is kind of going back down to one of those big things. It's like the old days with the Colts Patriots. So
and just one quick thing on that is we might have an answer on that maybe as soon as tomorrow night or Thursday night, Chargers versus Chiefs. If the Chargers can beat the Chiefs, they'd hold the tiebreaker versus them, and then the Patriots would hold the tiebreaker versus the Chargers if they finish with the same record. So that could be a very big game. Not only could the Chiefs might not get the number 1 seed, they might not even win their division. It might not have a home game,
which I think would actually be one of the worst case, not the worst case scenario, but it could be depending on how far it makes them fall.
You can play them in the first round,
which we wouldn't like. Ravens against the Browns. The Ravens actually ended up coming back in this game, which was super surprising. And they almost even won this game based on recovering an onside kick. But they lost Jackson for that game. He's supposedly back practicing this week. It's not a high ankle sprain, so it wasn't a severe one. But again, he really didn't look well in this game, and teams really know how to face them right now. You blitz Jackson, you limit him kind of to that phone booth in the middle of the field, and you don't make him make plays that way. And he's not going to beat you throwing. We've seen that multiple times now. So we may even see the Ravens fall out of the playoff picture if they keep losing. They've got a pretty tough schedule coming up.
Yep. Yeah, they do. I think the only things I really have to mention on that game is it was big because with them losing, it adds another room of separation for the Patriots to possibly get the 1 seed if they lose one of the last 4 games of the season. Which they just need the Chiefs to lose and then the Titans to lose. So that was good. At least with Jackson, you never want to see someone get hurt. But like you said, it doesn't seem as severe, but it still is an ankle injury. And for someone that his entire persona is mobility, I just don't know, unless he's completely healed by the playoffs. I think it's really going to hurt the Ravens going forward. And I've never been the biggest fan of Jackson to begin with, but you add that to him, it's just going to be tough for them to get by.
Yeah. The only kind of saving grace for him is Hundley plays a lot like Jackson. He's very quick. Jackson can't throw, and I don't think really Hundley can either. So, and Hundley actually, a few of his passes were actually pretty good. So, maybe who knows? Maybe they might find something in him. The Chargers, you kind of already mentioned already. They're kind of gaining momentum again, looking like they may be back. This could be an interesting show on Thursday night. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what happens there.
Yep.
Going next, kind of 3 up, 3 down. We do every week. This week we didn't have a game last week, so kind of thinking forward to the rest of the season. Kind of got to do the 3 Patriots we're most confident in going forward. And the 3 that you're kind of worried about going forward for the rest of the year into the playoffs. So you want me to take it off, or do you want to go up first?
I can start with my three up, and then you can go with your three up, then your three down. So my three up, I have to go with number one, Nick Falk. At least this season, he's just been absolutely automatic. In his entire time with the Patriots, he's missed 8 kicks and 7 extra points. But the last 2 years, especially, it's just if it's inside 50, he's pretty much making it. I believe he's at 52 straight inside 50, and I'd argue he's your MVP this year, just with how consistent he is. If he's inside the 50-yard line, you're at least getting 3 points every single time, as long as you don't turn it over. He's probably won't get it, but he's approaching the NFL record for most field goals made in the season. Record's 44. He's at 33. Hopefully he doesn't get that, because that means you're converting more of those into touchdowns, but he's been pretty much automatic. Number 2, I have to go with David Andrews. He's the leader on your offensive line, and he pretty much sets the pace. He sets the toughness, the mentality of that offensive line. And I know earlier on in the season, he had a couple of shaky games here and there, but last 6-7 weeks, he's just been automatic. Then number 3 is a little tricky. I'd probably just have to go with Adrian Phillips, I know he's not one of your he's not your best player, but I think he's one of your most versatile players. And since he's been here, he's just shown that whatever challenge he's tasked with, if it's facing covering tight ends, if it's him lining up inside the box, if he's covering halfbacks, he's very dependable. And I think those are the 3 people that, no matter who they're on or what you ask of them, you feel confident that they're going to be able to succeed in their task ahead.
Yep, I can't really argue with any of those. I think my number one, Nick Falk, same thing as you. He is completely automatic, and it's just insane just to think about how good he's gotten from where he was a few years ago. Kind of the fourth kicker that they had ended up getting for that year. And he's been just automatic. Every time he's out there, you're expecting him to make the kick. So he's been really dependable. I'm pretty confident in the way he's going to keep going forward in that. Second one's a little different. Ramondre Stevenson. He's just looked better and better each week, and I think I'm pretty confident in saying I think he's going to continue to get it better. He's looking more and more like a dominant lead back, not just a really good lead back, but a dominant one. He's making people miss after contact. We've talked about it the last few weeks. The yards he's getting after contact's insane. It looks like he's trying to actually hit people. He's just big, powerful, fast, and we were both really big Karis fans. Last year and going into the year, even still this year, I think we're pretty big on Harris. And that kind of 1-2 punch has been really good. I think Stevenson may be even better than him.
I agree.
And it's just crazy to think he's a rookie and how much more he's going to get better from that. And then my number 3 pick would be it was kind of tough between kind of choosing a few different people for this spot. But I think Lawrence Guy would be one. He's looked a lot better since the beginning of the year. It's kind of the difference than kind of the same route as Andrews. Didn't look really that great at the beginning of the year, but he's really looked well on this part, and he's going to be a big part of this run defense going forward if they're going to succeed. And I think he's going to kind of hold the line together on that part. So who would be the 3 that you're worried about going forward?
Yeah, I have to agree with all yours as well. I can't really argue. I think unless you have them in your bottom or your 3 worried, which I don't think you do, it's kind of surprising that neither of us included Matthew Judon or Christian Barmore, who I know they've been very well the first 10 weeks of the season, but the last couple of weeks they've kind of haven't been the same. So you might be including them. I think number 1, I have to go with Jake Bailey. He's just been too inconsistent this year, even though he was first team All-Pro last year and he was the best punter in the league last year. Even as a rookie, he was one of the best punters in the league, but I don't know if it's an injury, if something happened, but he just doesn't look the same. And in the playoffs and big games, playoff atmosphere, field position could be the difference in a game. And if he's not giving you those long high kicks, if they're shaky, if they go out of bounds, if it's trying to kick it inside the 20 and it just goes in the end zone, that field position could be the difference in the game. Number 2, I had to go with Isaiah Wynn. I know he's been very well ever since probably he came back from the Texans game, he has been a really good left tackle, but I still don't have faith in him yet. Earlier in the year, even sometimes last year, he just either some games or some plays he just gets beat, and that could possibly get Mac hurt or in a big situation if they know to rush him. I don't know if it's fully warranted. I just don't really trust him still, even at that position. Number 3, I still have to. I wasn't sure who to go with, but I'm probably going to go with N'Keal Harry. I know he doesn't see the field much, but it's just those boneheaded plays where I forget which was it. Trying to think of the game earlier in the year where they had to, I believe, call timeout where he wasn't lined up.
Yeah.
And then there was the punt this last game. I just don't feel confident with him on the field. I know you and I are both big on him when he came out of college, but he's just been looks like clueless whenever he's in the game. Especially the last year. I think his confidence might be down a little bit, but I just don't trust him when he's on the field.
Yeah, I think his football IQ is just very bad. He's just he looks like he's lost out there, even more so than why am I blanking on his name? Jono Smith. Jono looks like his confidence is shot. Harry just doesn't look like he knows what is going on, and I don't know with him.
I know Harry has been a really good blocker of late, and I've highlighted that a lot, but still I don't know if he's going to make a penalty in just a key situation. I just don't trust him being out there.
And if you gave anyone else his size, they'd probably be doing the same thing. And it's like if Jacoby Myers had the same size as him, he'd probably be even a better blocker than him, just based on his mental fortitude for that. So number 1, Isaiah Wynn for me, for most worried about. Like you said, he's had a couple good weeks. He's been really good in the run game. It's just the passing game I'm still worried about. I don't think he's a top tackle in the game, and I think he gets beat in different situations. So I'm just kind of worried about how it's going to go forward, especially in the playoffs when you get really good defenses in that point and things get faster. I just don't know if he has the capability of succeeding in those situations. And he's the thing I'm worried about most for Mac. Is he going to get him hurt? Is he going to kind of speed him up like he was in a few games? Because he's worried about getting hit. So he's my number 1. Number 2, like you had actually kind of alluded to before, Matthew Judon. He's been, I would have said in my confident list if it wasn't for the last 2 games. And same. I'm hoping, and I think it probably is the case where he might have just really needed this bye week to come kind of rest up, get recharged. Because he's been really dominant. He may have given a little bit too much in the beginning of the year. He may have burnt out a little bit. So this bye week may really help him. I'm hoping it's not something that teams have kind of figured out him in a way. He's been not great on the edge and kind of collapses the edge lately. And they've been running at him a little bit more often. So I'm just a little bit worried about that, where they may have found something in him. But I also think he could be a key. He's definitely the key. Him and Barmore are the key to this defense. So if they both can't play well, we're not going anywhere, because the zone will not hold up if you can't rush the passer. So he's the only reason I'm worried is the last 2 games. I'm not terribly concerned completely, but it's in the back of my mind where we need to see what happens with him.
That's fair.
And then my last one that I'm worried about it's not a big worry, but it's something that we always have to be worried about, is the fact that Mac Jones, where I think he can handle everything. I'm pretty sure he can. Just a rookie quarterback's never made the Super Bowl. So is he going to be the one to beat that? And a rookie quarterback's never really had Bill Belichick. So that's another thing. Or this type
roster.
of team. Yeah. But I think there's going to be a situation where you think about 2018, there was that Kansas City game where this was a ground and pound team going out into that, where the Chargers game was, they ran it up their ass. A few weeks before that, they were running up their ass, and before we get to the playoffs,
even
the Super Bowl was a running game in defense. But that Kansas City game, they needed to end up going to a shootout, and Brady was able to do that. Is that something Mac will be able to do? I think so. But we don't know. We don't know about this team in general. So it may not even be completely on him. but he hasn't had to do it that much. We've seen flashes where he's had to kind of try and do it, and he's done it here. We just never seen it in the playoffs. So I'm pretty sure he'll be able to do it. It's just we don't know. So that's just the one thing. It's not like a major worry, but it's something that you have to keep in the back of your mind where we've never seen really a rookie incident with him. So is it going to happen at the worst possible time, or is he going to be just that enigma where it doesn't happen? And even Brady, he had games where he threw, I think, 4 interceptions in his first year starting. It wasn't even technically rookie. We haven't seen that from Mac. So I'm just worried that it's going to happen at the worst possible time, because it's going to have to happen. Everyone has to go through it. So is it going to happen at the wrong time, or is he just going to be completely impervious to it? So
no, that's fair. That's actually someone I was thinking of including in mine just for those reasons. I think this season, whenever he's faced adversity, he's shown that he can handle it. The Texans game where they needed to come back, the Buccaneers game, they were doing that drive, which if that pass didn't get batted down, or Bill went for it on 4th down, or Falk had it slightly to the right, maybe they win that game and we think about it differently. Even the Cowboys game, he did have that bad interception, but he came right back. So like even the Chargers game too, it was close until the 4th quarter and he had some big drives, but it is going to be different in the playoffs, especially if it's in cold weather or bad weather, if it's raining, snowing. But I have confidence in him, but we'll have to see what happens.
Yep. Going forward, we're going to do a little kind of steal a little segment from Falk and Maz, 10 questions, and kind of just give our own spin on what our answers would be here from their kind of last few questions from the last few weeks. So this one kind of more pertains to what happened this past weekend and kind of the year overall. And we've kind of discussed this before. I don't think on the podcast, but we've talked about in general when rule changes come out. This weekend, there were 4 onside kicks that were actually recovered, which is a high number. There's been 8 actually recovered this whole season. And last year where there was just 3. Do you think that should be something still done to change the onside kick? If it should be a different rule for it, if there should be that 4th and 25 or 4th and 10 at the 25, that sort of thing. What do you think the onside kick, should it be replaced? Should it stay? Should something be adjusted with the kick itself? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's tough to really get. I know they changed the rules for player safety. I kind of like the old rules where you could have it lined up different, like a certain amount of people or as many people on a certain side. They got rid of that, but the way it currently is now, I know there were 4 recovered this weekend, but I still think that's more of an enigma. I think something does have to be different. Either go back to the old rules, which they won't do because of player safety, or I'm in favor of like 4th and 15 or 4th and 20 or from the 20-yard line or say. If it's just 4th and 10, I don't think that's challenging enough. I think it has to be challenging where it's still unlikely you're going to recover, but it's more likely than what's going on right now.
Yep.
So I'd say maybe 4th and 15 from the 20 or from the 15, something like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Something needs to be changed where if you look at, I saw 2 of them this weekend and they were just completely bad kick coverage. It wasn't something crazy that the kick was doing, or they found a way to do it. So I think either make it be like a 5-yard or a 7-yard difference instead of right now you have to wait 10 yards for it to get. So maybe kind of shorten that distance. Or my favorite one is that 4th and 15 or 4th and 20 from like your own 25, where it's more of like a bang play and you have a better chance of getting it. It makes it a little bit more interesting. I think one of those would be really, really nice. Maybe they should just pilot it in the preseason like they do sometimes. Try the different yardage for 1 week. Try the 4th and whatever and see what one looks better. And I'm guessing it's going to be the 4th and whatever, because it's going to lead to more offense. And that's something that people always like. Going on number 2, thoughts on the Urban Meyer situation. It gets worse and worse every day.
Yeah, it's just like every single week you hear something and you're like, wow, this can't get any worse. And then the next week something gets worse. And then there's the tweet by Field Yates which he showed let me bring it up. He showed 2 different news headlines 7 minutes apart. First one, Trevor Lawrence says drama has to stop for Jaguars to win. 7 minutes later, former Jaguars kicker Josh Lambo says he was kicked by Urban Meyer during warmups. Like it's just I have no idea what the hell is going through his mind, and it's almost as if he's trying to get fired, or he's trying to pull like a Costanza where, oh, this isn't getting me fired. I have to try something more egregious. I know this happened in the preseason, but still, like each story that comes out is weirder and more just, I guess, stupid.
Yeah,
Like,
and
I
it's
don't get
just
it.
like it's something that it's not surprising to any of us. All this madness is going on there, and the only one that kind of seems to surprise is Shahid Khan. Is that his name?
Something like that.
And it's just crazy that everyone called this. Everyone said this is going to be a disaster hiring this man. He's burned down every single program he's been to. The only reason he had success the last few times he's been there, he's been able to recruit really well because he had the name recognition. This is going to just end in disaster. They need to cut bait with him. They should do it now. That way they can get a kickstart and trying to find a new coach while they have the time to interview before the season ends. I think that would be a really good spot for Josh if that did happen, but we'll see on how the rest of the team goes. Number 3, given this year of the 5 rookie quarterbacks, and we've actually seen I think 6 start this year.
Yeah.
What does the lack of success for this rookie class kind of tell you about this year?
I don't know if it really tells you anything. It's just a lot of times rookie quarterbacks start because they're either high draft picks, which means they're on bad teams and bad situations, or there's an injury where they have to start out in necessity. For instance, like Davis Mills. But it's tough to really know what it really tells you. I think maybe it kind of shows that more teams should follow the traditional model or the old school model where you sit out the first year, have a veteran in front of you where you can learn from them, even if they're not going to help you win games. For instance, when the Bengals drafted Carson Palmer, number 1 overall, they had John Kitna start every single game his rookie year. Was Carson Palmer better than John Kitna? Probably. But they wanted him to learn. They didn't want to put him out in the fire and have him get hurt or learn bad habits. And I think that's something that more teams should start doing. We're seeing Zach Wilson, for instance, in Jets, just doesn't I don't know what he's doing half the time. It looks like he's playing more just out of fear or just reacting to what's in front of him instead of reading the defenses and everything. I guess you can say the same thing with the last 3 Jets quarterbacks, Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith, even Sam Darnold. If they're in different situations, if they sat out a year and then allowed the team to build around them so that when they do start, they have a good offensive line, some people they can actually throw to. I think that's a better situation for them. It doesn't, I know Mac is 9-4. The rest of the rookies are 7-33. I still think Trevor Lawrence can be a good quarterback if he's put in the right situation. I think Justin Fields has potential to be. Zach Wilson, possibly. Davis Mills looking like he's probably having the second best season behind Mac out of all the rookie quarterbacks, and he was the 3rd round pick. But I think it just shows that it's too early, but I think teams need to be more cautious before they put a rookie quarterback out to play.
Yeah, I think it kind of shows a little bit more kind of on depth of that, where it's that whole kind of nature versus nurture thing that we have discussed before about rookies, where there's a lot of good quarterbacks out there. We were talking about this before the draft. This is before we even started our podcast, where it all depends on really where you get placed. Where you look at like Sam Darnold, for instance, I think he has the potential. He had the potential to be a really good quarterback. I think the Jets ruined him. And you kind of see that even with Alex Smith when he was with the 49ers. Just the place where you end up getting placed and the coaching staff and the team that's around you really makes the difference. And I think owners need to kind of get this in their head that if they're drafting a rookie quarterback and they want them to play relatively soon, they need to have someone that's kind of offensive minded that can kind of groom them and make the right decisions for them, while also kind of making sure they're not putting too much on their plate. And it looks like Zach Wilson, he's trying to do everything out there and he can't. He doesn't have the line. He does have the receivers, but
even with Zach Wilson, just sorry to cut in, but even with him going into the season, they didn't have a single quarterback on the roster who played an NFL snap. So not only was you're putting too much on his plate, but there's no one for him to even learn from.
Yep. And if you put Mac Jones on the Jets, you put him on the Jaguars, you put him on the Bears, he wouldn't look the same. He wouldn't be the same quarterback. He would have a bad record. And it's kind of just, it's a big mark where if you're going to be drafting a quarterback, you need the right people around him. You need to have the right offense coordinator or a head coach, depending on whoever's going to be grooming this person. Tom Brady had Charlie Weiss, and then Bill Belichick as well. And even though Belichick's a defensive minded coach, he's pretty well rounded and knows everything. So he's one of the few that can actually say that. You look at Aaron Rodgers, he sat behind Favre for a while. McCarthy is, as much as we don't like him as a coach, I think he's kind of an idiot. He's also an offensive minded coach. So you just kind of see those situations where you need to be able to put the right people in place around him and make sure you have the right coordinators, the right staff. And I don't think Robert Saleh is anything. We also know that Urban Meyer's a disaster down there in Jacksonville. And Matt Nagy in Chicago is a disaster too. So if I was any of those owners, I'd make sure to try and cut bait as fast as possible and get someone in there that knows what they're doing. If I was the Jaguars, I'd fire Urban Meyer right now. And when the tampering period's available, I think it's week 16, I'd be calling up the Patriots asking
week 17, I think. There's 18.
Oh,
18 weeks.
It's the last 2 weeks. So I'd be asking if I could interview Josh McDaniels for the position, because you want someone like that. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that shows. It depends on where you're placed and kind of the situation around you. And that's what kind of breaks a lot of these quarterbacks. I usually we see the success rate is like 45% of quarterbacks drafted in the first round. The majority, I would say, of the reason is not that they're overdrafted, but just they're put in bad situations. And typically the teams that are drafted in the first place aren't good teams. So they're going to bad situations to begin with. And they're usually not getting better that quick because they're given some leniency when they draft a quarterback. Oh, you have another year or two to try and develop this guy. So you just keep kind of going in that same circle again. Next question. With the Colts coming up, did Josh make the right decision to leave the Colts at the altar at the time?
I think so. Obviously, as a Patriots fan, I'm glad he did. But I think I don't think we'll ever know the full reason why. But part of the reason why he was going to go there was he had Andrew Luck, who you thought was just a franchise quarterback that's going to be with you another 10 years, and then he retires, I believe, before the start of the next season. So at the time, it was obviously the right decision. I know they ended up getting Philip Rivers the next year, and they got Carson Wentz now, but I think overall, it's Irsay is kind of not a great owner to begin with. I think ultimately he made the decision that he thought was best. I don't know if it was something that had to do with Andrew Luck's health that made him concerned, or if it was more just Kraft and Bill saying that the keys are yours when Bill hangs it up, and him just being in a good situation, having Brady as his quarterback going forward. So it's tough to really know why, but I think it ultimately was the best decision. And I think for both the Colts and and Josh, it ended up working out. Looks like Frank Wright might be a good coach. He took them to the playoffs last year. I think they might have made the playoffs the year before. They weren't, but they were close to making it even without Andrew Luck. So I think ultimately he made the right decision, and it worked out best for both.
Yeah, I'd have to agree on this. I think he made the right decision. I think Irsay is kind of a loose cannon. And you never want to have your second job, your second hire be on that kind of unstable situation where you don't know what's going to happen from the owner. And this is basically your last chance. So you want to have the most perfect kind of situation going. Especially if you knew about Andrew Luck, about the health, and there was kind of rumors going around before then. There's been a lot to say that one of the reasons why he ended up changing his mind was because he had never talked to Bill about it during the playoff stretch or during the off season. Not really off season, but during that time when he was getting courted. And the only time he did talk to him was that night before. And then Bill kind of gushed, said, "I'm going to teach you more," and all that sort of stuff, and made him feel wanted. And that's what ended up making him change his mind. I also know his family has been growing up here, and it's a bigger thing kind of going forward. We'll probably address next week about what to do with what Josh may want to do in this future. But the family seems like a big part of his life. His kids were growing up. He's got 2 kids, and they're probably they're probably close to middle or high school now at their age.
I think some in high school, middle school and maybe one in
And
elementary.
he's been here for what, 20 years. So is he going to want to
Yeah.
uproot his whole family when you're getting paid right now as a head coach, basically? So it's just a thing. I think he made the right decision. Kind of going a little bit quicker now.
Yep.
Mac Jones and Josh Allen. We kind of had a little talk about this last podcast. Where do you rank Mac right now, and where does Josh Allen rank? Is Josh Allen a top 10 quarterback in your mind?
So I'm looking at them now. I know last week I didn't have a great answer at the
Mhm.
time. I think if we're including Deshaun Watson, no. If
Mhm.
we don't include Deshaun Watson, he's right at the edge.
Mhm.
Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Watson, Herbert, Burrow, in no order. Murray, Prescott, Matthew Stafford. Maybe you could argue Kirk Cousins, but I don't think so. So he's like right at that 10-11 line. Mac, I'd say right is near there. I still think right now you can't put Mac above any of the people I listed or Josh Allen. Maybe you could put Kirk Cousins. Lamar Jackson, I'm not a big fan of, so I can't put him above him. So I think Mac's probably top 11, 12, which is surprising. If you look at his stats, it's actually since week 5, he's top 3, top 4 in most stats other than yards. So he's been playing really well. And hopefully he just keeps getting better with time. But I definitely put Mac in at least top 12. Allen, I'd put ahead of him. Maybe or Cousins, I think, is ahead of Mac as of now. But I'm trying to decide between Mac or Cousins and Allen. But they're both right around like 10, 11, 12.
Yeah. I kind of have the same sort of thing. I think Allen, I have right around 10 quarterback. I've got Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, Wilson, Watson, Prescott, Burrow, Herbert, Murray ahead of him. I don't think Stafford's really ahead of him. I still don't really believe in Stafford, even though most of it was the Detroit ways. And then Mac, I have he's a top 15 quarterback. I do have again Josh and then Stafford, Garoppolo ahead of him. I don't like Cousins at all. I don't think he's a winner. I don't have Baker ahead of him just because even though I do love Baker and I think Baker's a winner, he just hasn't proven it. And then Tannehill, I don't think is better than Jones right now. So
yeah, I don't
I do put Jimmy ahead of Jones just because he's had more experience. He's shown that he wins. He's just injury waiting to happen. But other than that, that's where I'd put him. Next question. What would the Pats' record be with Brian Hoyer?
This is a tough question to really answer because, and I'll explain why. So I'm just looking at the schedule right now. They lost week 1 to Miami. I think with Hoyer, that's a loss. They beat the Jets week 2. I think that's a win. They lose to New Orleans. I think that stays with Hoyer. They lose to Tampa. I think they lose even more without Hoyer. They had to have a big comeback versus Houston. I don't know if Hoyer would have had that, so I put that as a loss. Right now, they're 1-4. Next week, they lose to Cowboys in overtime. I don't think Hoyer would have won that game. Right now, they're 1-5. They beat the Jets. They're 2-5. They face the Chargers. I think they probably lose. So they're 2-6. So if you're going based on just the outcome, I think they beat the Panthers 3-6, beat the Browns 4-6, beat the Falcons 5-6. Tennessee, I think they probably win 6-6, then they lose to Buffalo, or they probably beat Buffalo, so 7-6. But being 1-5, 1-6, I don't know if the same mentality, knowing Brian Hoyer is your quarterback, if the team fights back like they have. So if everything happens just the way that the Patriots start building momentum and everything like they have this season, I think that you could argue they'd be 7-6. If they started 1-5, I don't know if I know even with Belichick as the head coach, I don't know if they could turn it around and end up becoming 7-6, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. I had them at 7-6, Chargers and Houston losing. That Titans game also pretty iffy where they might have lost that, but I gave it to them in there. But that's a good point that I didn't think about the 1-6 situation. So that could have definitely derailed the season. But
and I do have a question to ask you about this question. What would the record be any different if Cam Newton was the quarterback between Brian Hoyer?
Yes, it would be even worse.
Even worse?
I think
Cam Newton was going to be our starting quarterback coming into the season.
I think because Brian Hoyer is more of that game manager that just loses his mind in the big games. I think he's even looking at him this year. He's throws the ball really well.
Yeah.
He's pretty accurate-ish. It's just those big games kind of he's like a deer in the headlights. So we got to remember he did lead the Houston Texans to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So he's not
Won the
a
division.
complete bum. It's just that when the lights shine bright, he's lost.
I don't know. It's just thinking of that Kansas City game last year. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel if Bill was confident in him being the starting quarterback over Hoyer, I think they'd at least be 7-6.
Yeah.
Maybe they somehow find a way to pull out against Houston or some other team, but I don't know.
That's a good question. I think maybe 6 and 7 to give him a little loss. Yeah. Going forward, name one bubble team. Right now, that's not that. If the season were in today, so any team that's on the bubble right now, who would you rather see in that's not in right now?
I'm gonna change. So, not who would I rather see in as a Patriots fan, as just a football fan. I'd enjoy watching is Cincinnati Bengals. Watching Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. I know they've been up and down, especially more down the last maybe 5-6 weeks, but they have some talent, especially on offense, where they can score and they could sneak out a win or two against some of these bigger, better teams.
Yep. I would go with the Browns, and I think you know why. Baker Mayfield. So I think I'd really want to see them, see how they do, and see if he can kind of live up to the task that he hasn't been able to so far. Going forward against total NFL again. Who's your top 3 right now for MVP?
MVP, I have to go with number 1 is Brady. He's leading every quarterback, and I believe every single statistical mark for a quarterback. I know he has some of the best weapons in the NFL, but still at his age, at 44, doing this where arguably could be one of his best seasons as a quarterback. And if he just throws 4 more touchdowns, 2 of his 3 highest touchdowns in the season are going to be with the Bucs. And which is kind of insane considering the first 20 years were at the Patriots, which at the time he was the greatest of all time before he even went to the Bucs. Number 2 I'd probably have to go with Rodgers. He's really put the Packers in a great situation. I think the media is kind of overhyping how well he's done this year, but I think you have to put him number 2. The number 3 is tough. I think you could argue Jonathan Taylor. I'd probably go with Kyler Murray. I know they lost to the Rams, but he has the Cardinals as the number 2 or number 3 seed in the NFC right now with only 3 losses. So I know he's missed a couple games with injury, but I probably have to just go with Murray.
Yep, that's a good point. I was kind of going back and forth between my last third one. So Brady, I have number 1. 2, I have Rodgers, even though I hate him. And 3, I have Jonathan Taylor, just the way that he's leading the Colts with the running game. And then again, another special mention would be if Derrick Henry never got hurt. Would have been those 2. But next question, number 9. We're almost finished. Who should the Steelers quarterback be next year?
So I texted you on, let me see, October 3rd at 5:24 Eastern time. Prediction: Jimmy G is Steelers starting quarterback 2022, in parentheses, assuming he's not injured. 40 minutes later, he left the 49ers game with an injury. But since I predicted that, I'm just going to stick with it. I think Jimmy will be their starting quarterback. I think they'll hand the keys over to Lance next year. I don't know if he'll be ready, but that's what I predicted it early. So usually when I make a prediction, I stick with it until I'm proven wrong.
That's a good one. I was between him and someone else. So because you picked him, I'm going with Aaron Rodgers. I think it's around the same-ish part of the country. It's cold. It's miserable. He's got a really good offense. He's out of the NFC. I don't think they're going to trade him to anywhere in the NFC. So put him in the AFC. Got really good weapons. Some morons, but some good weapons. And a jackass of a head coach. And I think it'd be kind of interesting to watch. So I want Aaron Rodgers at the Steelers.
Yeah, that's fair.
Number 10, who's the most overrated player in the NFL?
This is very tough. I'm just the 3. I'll name the one that comes to mind, and then I'll give after you say yours, I'll give the other 2 I'm thinking of. I have to go with Kirk Cousins.
Oh, that's a good one. Lamar Jackson. I don't think
that's good. Fair. I wasn't even thinking of him. Yeah.
He's a running back at quarterback. He can't throw the ball. You blitz him and he turns into a puddle, and he's melted down every single playoff game he's been in. So
if I could change my pick, I'd go with Lamar. I completely forgot about him. But the other ones I was thinking was Baker. and Jamal Adams.
Oh, that's a good one. There was just an article I was reading about how he's going to end up destroying the Seahawks because
completely
they
screwed him.
Yeah,
They traded 3 first-round picks for him.
Yep. So that ends our 10 questions.
And then I have one additional question that I posed to you earlier. Patriots are, according to according to Pat's cap space, they're going to be up against the cap this upcoming offseason, and they have some key unrestricted free agents. So outside of JC Jackson, who we both believe is going to get the franchise tag, if you could only keep 3 of these upcoming unrestricted free agents, who would they be? And the options are Devin McCourty, Hightower, Slater, Bentley, Adrian Phillips, Ted Karis, Nick Falk, Trent Brown, or Brandon Bolden.
All right. Or Jamie Collins, but I'm not going to.
Or Jamie Collins, sorry. That was on the next
So I thought about this, and let's see if I remember what I picked. I do remember now. Phillips, Bentley, and Slater. So I think Bentley, because you're gonna need a middle linebacker. He's younger than Hightower. He's looked like he's been playing pretty well this year. But it may just also be that Hightower's there too, so it may be kind of taking the burden off of him. Phillips is a quintessential part of this defense. He does everything. He does everything really well. And then Slater, I wanted him just because I still want one of those kind of locker room components between him, Hightower, and McCourty, and I feel like he's the cheapest part to stay in there. So I go with him. I think honorable mention would be Nick Falk, but if I can only have 3, I'm not gonna pick a kicker. So that's where I go.
That's fair. My number 1 is Phillips. Number 2, Ted Karis. Number 3, Nick Falk. So Phillips, like I said, and like you just said, he's been one of your most valuable players on the Patriots this year. He's not the best player, but how much he brings to this team, this defense, he's one of your best players, one of your most valuable players. He does everything. Number 2, I went with Ted Karis because offensive line was shaky until he came in. I know that's something we were calling for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season for Karis to be at guard, but he's just completely stepped up. He's been rated one of the best guards in the NFL this year. And also by him being at guard, it was allowed Wynn to move to tackle, which is more of his natural position. I know that Wyn's not playing as much right now, but I'm assuming Trent Brown might not be back next year. And then Wynn would be able to start at tackle. So you have a guard who will probably be cheaper compared to other guards. As well. And then number 3, Nick Falk. He's your MVP. He's automatic. I know he's going to be another year older next year. But kickers historically play past position players by age. So I don't expect him to completely fall off a cliff next year. One thing I would add, though, is I feel McCourty, Hightower, and Slater. I know I didn't include them, but just relatively speaking, I feel they're either going to come back on discounted deals or I don't see them playing for any other team. So they'll either retire or come back as a Patriot, in my opinion. So you might be able to get them cheap and then sign some other people. But just for the aspects of this question.
That's a good point. Just moving on last, the Colts game that's upcoming got moved to flex to the Saturday night. It's going to be one of their biggest challenges yet this far since they've started this win streak. They're kind of built the same way that the Patriots are, at least on offense, where they're a really big power rushing team. Jonathan Taylor, again, like we mentioned, really good running back. Passing game isn't as great. I don't believe too much in Carson Wentz. I think he's a mistake waiting to happen. But it's going to be a pretty big game. If you realistically, you need to kind of split this game in Buffalo in order to win the division. So it's going to be pretty interesting going forward what happens next. So I think you can split at least one. I don't think you're going to lose 2 games in a row, but again, but I think this is going to be a pretty big matchup coming forward. Anything you like to kind of discuss about this team? The only kind of one thing I'd mention, we mentioned the running game with Carson Wentz a little bit. I think their defense, you can really attack them in their safeties. I don't think their safeties have great play. So you can kind of attack them there. Their offensive line, though, is very good. So it's going to be a big kind of key game for Barmore and Judon for the pass rush, but then for the rushing defense, they've got a very good center, and he's back. He's off of the COVID list now. So it depends on who they put at nose tackle. Is Godchild going to be back where he hasn't played that well, or is it going to be Carl Davis again and have that big body up front? So that's going to be another key to this game. Who plays nose tackle, how they play with that.
Yeah, no, those are really good points. I think this is going to be a big game. I know the Colts are 7-6, but they lost some tight games. They lost by, I think, 3 to the Rams earlier this year. They lost to the Titans in overtime when Carson Wentz threw a horrendous interception to lose the game. They lost to the Buccaneers, which they probably should have won. They had some close games where they should have pulled it out, but they didn't. I know they have Jonathan Taylor's one of, if not the best backs in the NFL outside of Derrick Henry. And he's on pace for, I think, 1,800 rushing yards this year. He's just been really, really good. Outside of that, though, they have some good receivers. They have Michael Pittman, Mo Alley Cox, the former VCU basketball player at tight end, who's I think second in the team in touchdowns. So they have some weapons on offense. They have a really good offensive line. But I just don't know if I fully trust Carson Wentz. He's turned it over a lot less this year than he has in past years, only has 5 interceptions on the year. But in those key situations, like the second Titans game where they were in overtime and he was getting sacked and he just threw it up for an easy pick 6. I just don't know if I trust him. For the Patriots defense, they're going to have to try and stop Jonathan Taylor, stop the running game. And if they stop the running game, it's going to force the Colts to pass and force Carson Wentz to beat you, which I don't know if he can. One thing they're going to have to look out for, and you're going to need, it's good that it looks like Adrian Phillips is coming back, is they do pass to their running backs a lot. Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines, they've combined for 60 catches or almost 70 catches this year and 600 receiving yards. So they do pass to the running backs a lot. Mo Alley Cox is a pretty decent tight end. Michael Pittman's a really good receiver. So they have some options on offense. I think it's just if the Patriots are able to get a big lead and they're able to shut down Jonathan Taylor, it's going to force the Colts to pass. And I don't know if Carson Wentz can come back and beat you. Some things just talking about their defense. I was actually surprised to see that it's not really as good. It's kind of reminds me of the Titans defense, where going into it, you're hearing a lot that they're pretty good, but if you look at the stats and just watch some of the games, they don't really look that great. They're middle of the road in passing yards allowed and rushing yards allowed. They do have the second most passing TDs allowed, though, in the NFL with 26. And they also have the most passing yards allowed to, or receiving yards to tight ends with 70, which is good for the Patriots, considering they have Henry and Smith. So I think the Patriots might try and target Jonnu and Hunter Henry a lot if they want to have some success. And then when you get inside the red zone, the Colts are allowing 70% touchdowns inside the red zone, which is third worst in the NFL. That's actually been one of the Patriots' weak points this year. And that might be something that if they can have success there, considering the Colts don't have much success on defense, that might be something they can build upon for the following week against Buffalo. So look for Mac Jones to throw. I know the Colts were saying how we're going to stop the run and force Mac to beat us and see if he can do it. So I don't think it's smart when a team calls out a specific player. I know when teams did that in the past to Brady would usually eat them alive. I don't know if Mac's there yet, but I feel like that's just something you don't do. You don't give another team bulletin board material. But considering their pass defense isn't great either, I think that was kind of stupid for them to do. So I look for the Patriots to obviously start with running the ball a lot, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Mac try and air it out, especially inside the red zone.
Yep. And I think it's something that we all know too, is that if you're playing the Patriots, how are you going to try and defend them? You're going to try and stop the run first.
Yeah.
Try and make Mac beat you because they're a running team. That's how they get a lot of their yards. And but Mac is really good with the play action. He's really good with those short crossers and that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to say.
Yep. And then just one aspect is I'm interested to see Hendricken alumni Kwity Paye on defense, starting defensive edge, to see how he does. I actually thought the Patriots were going to draft him because I didn't think any of the quarterbacks were going to be around at 15. And I thought that him being a Michigan man, also his roots to Rhode Island, would be something that, considering how athletic he is, he'd give your defense just another versatile threat. And I know he's been pretty good this year. He only has 3 sacks, but he has been productive. So should be interesting to see.
No, it should be. Kind of going into the line of the game. The line actually moved a little bit. It was -1 to start for the Colts. Now it's -2.5, which is actually surprising that it's going favoring the Colts more than the
Yeah.
Patriots, which usually everything this in this kind of streak, it's been kind of going more towards the Patriots than the opposing team. So, where do you see the Patriots in this one?
I know the Colts should scare me because they're playing well. I
Mhm.
think they're 1-6 of their last 8. They have a good running team. They kind of match up pretty well with the Patriots.
Mhm.
Defense a little worse, but I don't. I see the Patriots starting off hot, maybe scoring one or touchdown on the first, maybe in the second drive to start off maybe 14-0, 14-3, 14-7. And I don't see the
Mhm.
Colts coming back from that. I see Patriots winning 31-20, and the score is not, the game's actually not as close as the score. I think the Colts might get a garbage touchdown late,
Mhm.
but I see them winning pretty handily. I don't know if they're going to completely shut them out or blow them out,
Mhm.
but I don't see the Colts unless they force some turnovers, which they've done. They have the 4th most interceptions in the league.
Mhm.
Unless they force Mac to throw some interceptions, unless they force some fumbles, I don't see the Colts winning this game.
Yep. I my score is pretty similar. I see the Patriots winning this one. I see 27-17. A little bit closer in the points. A few more field goals for the Patriots, but I wouldn't be surprised either if they kind of blow them out after
Yeah.
everything that they've been saying and how they've looked so far, and maybe look to try and ear Mac out just to kind of show they can. But it's gonna be a dome, good weather, that sort of thing. But I say 27-17. 1 point under the over is 45. But yeah, so pretty similar takes there. Anything else to add at all?
No, that's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Make sure you follow us on at Pat's 300 Level Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe, rate, and review. And again, we're on YouTube if you're just listening to us on the podcast platform. So give us a check out there. Thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you next week, recapping the Colts game and kind of previewing the Bills game that's up and coming.